Welcome to episode 46 of the Putting Couch, brought to you by the SeeMore Putter Company's tour team. I'm Jim Grunberg, along with Cody Hale, Ted Galena, and this week it's back to Dr. Bob time. Dr. Bob Winters, who is one of the world's foremost experts in helping us sort of separate the critical from the unneeded when it comes to the cluttering of our minds in sports and golf. So, Doc, good to have you on today. And with golf just exploding over the last couple of years, worldwide, so many new golfers showing up to golf courses and practice centers, and just hearing great things about golf and wanting to check it out. We're all seeing the explosion. There's long waiting lists at clubs and the golf courses, the municipal golf courses that were considering turning over into something else, all of a sudden are trying to figure out a way to get another 18. So all those new golfers coming to the game. Let's just talk to them about, your thoughts on, right from the very beginning, what are some of the things they can do to establish a good foundation when it comes to the way they think about the game and the way they're going to play and practice the game.
Well, it's an exciting time, for so many people. And I do so much work, as you know, with a lot of the junior golfers coming up and, the young girls coming up into the program, today. I mean, the numbers are just flourishing, especially with the number of, high school programs, junior, middle school programs that are available for girls and also, young boys, but also, the collegiate, interest. And so a lot of, young women are getting involved in golf. Plus, we just finished, the Solheim Cup, and we saw, a wonderful European USA rivalry. And it all really came down to who made the putts. And so when we start talking about being introduced to the game, I think most of us were introduced to the game via, putt or just, having a putter. And it was really one of the simplest strokes. We just take it back and through, and we could actually, roll the ball a little bit and have some success. So it sort of, the proof is in the pudding. You actually make a few putts, you get hooked, and there's sort of that, response. You go, wow, I want to do that again. It becomes fun. But as, we become more proficient in the game, we also realize that, almost half of the strokes are with the flat stick. And we realize the importance of it. But what most people forget is psychologically and emotionally is that the way we putt is usually the way we feel and the way we go, because most tournaments are really won or lost, with this flat stick. So it is an exciting time. A lot of people are playing, the game and they love it. And I think that's a good place to start with the foundation, is that, going from the hole backwards. We always talk about getting off the tee, but the final stroke on any hole, on any round, any tournament, is that ball going into the hole, usually with the putter. So that's a good place to start. Great.
You mentioned putt, which is kind of funny. I mean, you're right. I mean, there's very few people that haven't done that at some point in their lives and loved it. What can we learn from putt? I mean, is there anything that, as you said, everybody's got a foundation. And so is there anything that you could call out that, golfers can think back towards about putt that actually would be transferable?
Well, I think everything's transferable from putt, because putt, you start from a stationary position. You get your posture, you get over the ball. You know that you want to hit the putt solid. But now in putt, we had a lot of angles, a lot of bank shots. So we were talking about imagination, creativity, being able to actually see the putt, almost even feel that sort of that motor response before you hit the putt. Where was I going to actually aim? So putting aim, I was going to aim it to hit it, on this side of the sideboard. And it was funny because we used to have those putt championships. And I remember meeting, one of the great ace machines years ago. And they would have putt competitions, every Saturday on TV, and they had putt courses all around the world. And most of them, really focused on one thing, and that was hitting the ball, solid, dead weight. But they would actually do banks, double banks. So it was almost a form of billiards, And so when we start talking about the great putters who've been major champions, I remember Larry Nelson was talking to me about how he actually learned a lot about breaks and apexes and really learning how to read greens from his days, playing pool, playing billiards. So there's, a nice positive transfer effect there. So, but I also think it's that, what's the objective in putt-putt? It's to get the ball in the fewest number of strokes. So I think there's a lot of nice positive transfer there.
And I think also, you could say there's a fun competitive part of putt and putting that I think golfers need to understand right up front, that it seems like once we get into golf and we start focusing on all the things that are out there about how to hit it far and how to hit it, how to hit your irons and what have you, that a lot of times the putting part becomes just sort of a bolt on, and you lose track of the fact that, hey, wait a second, this is the game within the game. It can be a lot of fun. You can really, if you dedicate the time and energy to it, it will be a rewarding part of the game. And
absolutely. And
go in once they get out to the golf course, I see that they almost just forget about the putting part.
And that's so true. It reminds me of, the classic movie where Happy Gilmore's coach takes him to that, putt-putt playground where he's putting through windmills and he's going through dragons and whatever. And then when you get out on a regulation golf course, it's funny how so many people see the windmills and the dragons in their mind over a 3-foot and 4-foot putt. And they're saying, I wish I had some of these distractions because they kind of help me, focus a little bit better. But it's funny because I think, golf has become sort of this very universal game because, of the COVID and the pandemic. Everyone wants to get out and play. So everyone is really, learning to love the game, for the first time and then falling in love with it again if you're a veteran performer. But, the game itself is great. And I think when we start talking about the skill of putting, just, putting itself, it just teaches us a lot about, yes or no. Did you make it or not? And so it's pretty black and white. There's really no gray area in what I consider putting. But even though you might miss a putt, we still have to learn, what did we get from the feedback? Did we hit a good putt? Did we hit it with the proper weight? And so, I'm always telling my, players, and now, and being part of our tour staff, anybody that comes to see me about, SeeMore process, I'm always talking about, okay, did you step into the putt with the intention to make? But if you missed it, did you miss it with the intention of making? And did you miss it well? Because that's a real important part. If you miss putts well, and that some of the very best putters we've ever putted with, and you've seen, play, they always look as if the ball has a chance to go in. And that's why I'm talking about, if you're trying to make a putt and you miss it, did you miss it well? And I think that is the number one characteristic of all the great putters, that I've talked with or have actually had interviews and consulted with. That's something that hardly anyone ever talks about.
Dr. Bob, you sort of might have answered this question just right there, but if you're, I would think going from putt to the actual putting green for a new golfer, putt, you sort of have those safety barriers with the boards and everything, right? So if for some reason they do happen to hit it hard or offline, it sort of bounces back in and close and so forth. And then, this is kind of easy. But then when a new golfer goes on to the actual green of number one or number two, you don't have that safety more, those barriers around you anymore. So how does that new golfer sort of take that safety, put in a nice putt without using those safety barriers?
Well, that's just, part of the process of experiencing making and missing. And I could tell you, Ted, for a fact that last week I was at a beautiful golf course called the Rock Creek Cattle Company out in Missoula, Montana, Deer Lodge, Montana. And I'm playing a Tom Doak golf course. And we're up in the mountains about, 8,000 feet above sea level. And for someone who lives in Florida now, came from the Midwest, I've played a lot of courses out west in the Rockies and such, and when I was, a professional. But it's always funny how you think you can read greens. And here's a guy who's spent 45, 50 years, studying putting. And I looked at a putt and I've got about a 50-footer. And my partner is telling me, hey, you've got to be very, watch this one. And I remember telling him, say, let me read these greens, see if I can figure it out. And I actually hit the putt, and I hit it very solid. And I wish I'd had a couple of those 2x4 bank boards behind the hole, because I actually putted it off the green. I thought, I was going uphill. It was really going downhill. I putted it off the green, and I putted it 40 yards off the green. And as I was laughing at myself, Professor Putt here, and they looked at me and they go, Doc, you just got doped. They call it. You just got doped. Yeah. And so it's funny. Almost no amount of experience sometimes. You really got to, have this collective experience, this backlog of memories. And I think this is really what great putters or good putters do. They spend an inordinate amount of time on the practice green, seeing all sorts of putts, downhill putts, side hill putts, uphill putts at different speeds on different contours. And they have this Rolodex, this computer chip of collective memories that sees all of these different putts. And sometimes, no matter how many collective experiences and great memories you have, sometimes you hit a putt like this and it fools you. And you've just got to sit there and go, I need to be a little bit more observant the next time. So now I'm starting to walk to the side, starting to talk to the low point, going around the green. And when you do that, it gives you the very best, impression of how you want to hit the putt. And I remember in our first book, with Dr. Patrick Cohn, The Mental Art of Putting, Using Your Mind to Putt Your Best, one of the quotes that Greg Norman, gave Dr. Patrick Cohn and myself, and he's a wonderful sports psychologist, great friend. And he said, in order to putt great, you have to give yourself the very best visual observation that you possibly can to give you a clear picture of where you want the ball to go and at what speed. So the more clear that picture can become, the more decisive, the more sure can be your stroke. And, sometimes, just like me out in Montana, you get doped, and then you have to look at yourself and go, I hit the putt the way I wanted to. I just misread it, and I made a sensory error. Not so much a mental or physical error, but a sensory error. And that's a kind of a hard error to detect. And that's why when you see the best putters on tour miss a putt, they come back and they kind of shake their heads and go back and forth and go, what the heck just happened there? It wasn't so much their stroke. It wasn't so much their mental constitution. It was just they actually had a bad read, or the putt went a different way than what they might have, first thought.
Yeah, hey, Doc, I think you touched on this too. I mean, we've all played golf for so many years, and I think one of the things I've understood the most is the game's very humbling, but also is one of the things I've learned is patience. And I think all levels of golfers, but especially new golfers, there's extreme difficulties in improving, right? And especially out of their gates as they're trying to get better, it can be frustrating to get better. And a lot of times I have to go back and try to make some changes in my own games to remember when you tell somebody to do something, it's quite difficult for them to put that into effect, and it takes time to make a change. So not only for avid golfers and golfers at the highest level, but new golfers when they come into the game, it's difficult. So from a mindset perspective, how can they overcome some of the challenges of, when you go out, even in the full swing, but especially putting? I had a guy in here the other day that he's trying to break 100 for the first time, but he can't have under 40 putts. And so there's a great opportunity there, but it can be frustrating. So what would you just say to a lot of those golfers in terms of how can they overcome that from a mindset standpoint?
Well, one of my key sayings has always been is that patience is confidence waiting to happen. But most, new players, they want patience, and they want it right now, and they want results, and they want it right now. So I think the biggest thing we can do, and it's a psychological term that we talk about, reinforcement, is that when you have a player who is new to the game and they hit a lot of putts and they're all over the green, but then they hit a good putt, that's the one we want to focus on. That's what we call partial reinforcement. That's the putt that we really want to focus. And you ask them, hey, what did you do there? What did that feel like? What happened there? And so they can kind of go into their sensory, memory bank and say, this is really what I was thinking. This is really what I felt. And this is what I did. And then we'll look back and we'll say, I need you to do that. And I need you to really tap into that positive experience. So say you've got a new player and they have 4 putts and they hit all 4 putts and they hit them and they think they hit them the same, but one of them is much better than the others. I always want them to go back and sort of, dismiss the other 3, but really focus on what did you do well on that. I think that positive approach, and we're also learning, from the negative feedback as well. But I think we need to place even much more emphasis on what we're doing well, so we know what we're supposed to do when we get into a new novel situation. But I mean, those are pretty unique situations. And I think when I work with new players, it's funny. I was talking to, someone about 3 weeks ago, and they were, talking about this, a woman player, and she loves the game. But one of the things she doesn't want to do is ever leave any putt short. Nothing short. Everything is going to have a chance. Now, when I say have a chance, they tell me that she doesn't care if she's 5 feet by, 10 feet by, 15 feet by, but she is going to eliminate one of those dimensions. She is never going to be short. So the great thing about, putting is this, and it gets back to your comment, Ted, is that, I mean, you have a 4 1/4 inch hole, and you have the whole daggone world around it. And that ball can go anywhere. We want that anywhere. We want that ball to go into the hole, to roll into the cup and drop into the cup. And I'm always trying to help young players understand this. It isn't basketball. There's not a goal. There's not a bank board behind the hole. You have to be able to putt the ball at what we call drop speed or roll speed, so that gravity and physics, can take effect. So that's a nice appreciation of that motor skill that I think we need to teach young players. And it's something that we always need to enhance as we even become more competitive and more serious about the game. Because what's one of the first things we want to do when we get to, the putting green, for those of us who are established players and working with all sorts of different levels, we're trying to understand what's the green speed, what is the green and the conditions giving us today, what's the rolling resistance. So when we start talking about the stimp speed, the stimp meter speed, the rolling speed, that's what we're really looking at. So we're really rolling some putts out there to a desired distance. Just not just, trying to see if we're hitting it solid and hitting it on line, but are we actually hitting it with the right pace and letting the ball roll to a desired distance? Because that's really what, true putting is all about, is rolling it a very specific distance on a direct line with the right speed, so the ball has a chance to fall or drop into the hole. Now, when we start talking about that, wow, that's getting a little bit complicated. But the whole notion of the game, from a very simplistic standpoint, is just to roll it in the hole. And I think the simpler we can keep it with this childlike mentality, that is really where I'm trying to get my players to putt, with the freedom and the novelty and innocence of a child, where they don't even fear missing. All they want to do is just make the putt.
Dr. Bob, I mean, I know this is a simple question, but how important is it to a new golfer to see a ball go in the hole with a putt? Meaning, they're starting on the tee box and it might take them 6 or 7 shots. Then now they finally make it to the putting green, and are they going to take 2 putts, 3 putts, 4 putts, or 1 putt? I mean, how important is it after that long hole per se? Do they see that ball finally go in the hole? Is it a relief? Is it confidence? Is it, okay, I can do this and let's move on to the next hole? I know it's a simple question, but what is it in their mind that makes them keep on going?
Ted, we're talking about the simple, most important ingredient in putting. And people are always talking to me about expectations. Should I have a positive expectation going into a putt? Should I expect to make this putt? Well, when we start talking about expectations, that's a preset standard of how you think something should be could be or you want to have happen. And I'm always trying to put away the expectations, because I happen to believe that you can never, ever see the ball rolling into the cup often enough in your practice or your preparation. That's the feed. And what that continual feed of seeing the ball go into the hole does for you, it gives you this subliminal, optimistic anticipation that the ball is going to go in the hole. Now, that's something that we really haven't talked, about before here on the putting couch. But I happen to believe that's really what good players and good putters feel. It's visceral. It's a feeling that they have, is that when they step into a putt, they have a feeling and a strong belief that it's going to go into the hole. And I think this is really what made Jack Nicklaus so great as a clutch putter. Perhaps put Tiger Woods in there as well. Because Jack, when he stepped in to actually hit a putt, he would say, I just know that this is going in. And if he didn't know it was going in, he said, I believe it's going to go in. And he would always say, I never missed a putt in my mind before I stepped into, the putt. So this whole notion about having this optimistic anticipation, because I think you actually earn the right to feel confident in your putting by seeing the ball go in the hole a lot. And that's whether it's 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, but you get this, success, and success creates more success. And the residue of all those successful hold putts is really what we call enduring confidence. So really what you're saying there, Ted, I think is spot on, is that, when they get to the green, hopefully they have that feeling of, hey, I know, I've had a kind of tough round getting here to the green, but I know I can do this. And I think that's why a lot of people fall in love with putting, when they first start out the game, because they know they can do this. But it's funny, and the more that we actually play the game and we put more emphasis on all the other aspects of the game, we kind of get away from actually putting. And then, when it comes down to crunch time, when we need to make a putt, damn, I wish I'd spent more time, hitting a lot of putts and practicing my putting. And I can tell you for sure in my career, I wish I had done much more, putting practice and the right, preparation for putting and putting the right way and really using my putting practice smarter, not harder, but just smarter, making more 5 to 15 foot putts before I go out, because those are the possibility putts, the opportunity putts. And those are the ones that Patrick Cantlay made. Those are the ones that the European, women's team made coming down the stretch, those 5, 7, 8 footers. And those are the ones that help you win golf tournaments. They're also the ones that help lower your score.
So if you've got a group of new golfers, even maybe some mixed in with very good golfers right now, and a lot of golfers, probably the first thing they're going to do when they start getting into it is they're probably, if they do go and take lessons or they watch videos and what have you, it's probably going to be on the other 13 clubs, right, in the bag. But if you could get them all to come together, and maybe you do this on a regular basis out onto the putting green, and you want to set the expectations with them and set some habits and set some parameters that are going to help them improve. It sounds to me like you're saying the first thing is you'd bring everybody over there and you'd say, you've got to feel and see the speed of each putt in your mind. And then once you get a feel for that, to where it's going to be at a uphill, is it downhill, is it what is the speed going to be? Then you're going to go to the line and you're going to say, and you're going to add that on. And then I guess you're going to say, okay, now we have to have a putter where once you get a feel for those first two things, you become one with, and that you're set up square to the ball every time. And, those three things could probably get any golfer set up to putting sort of the right way, the confident way, to where they can start seeing putts. Because my guess is a lot of golfers do stand over the ball and probably never really see that ball going in their mind. And I mean, if you're going to do that, you might as well just be blindfolded.
Well, that's exactly right. People get ball bound. They start thinking so much about their stroke. And So as you know, I mean, I've been in this game for a long time, and I remember being part of the Nike golf school, the junior golf schools for 30 years and helping start those all across the country. I would take literally now thousands and thousands of junior golfers and our first day, and we'd go to the putting green, and I would tell them, two or three things, very important. One, you have to have a philosophy that every putt can be made, what we call possibility putting. Second is that every putt deserves to be made, meaning your intention and your focus, whether it's 6 inches, 6 feet, or 60 feet, it can be made. And you really want to actually try to make it. But then when we actually get, close to the hole, I say one of the most important things is let's start at 1 foot or 2 foot. And let's start, by getting into a good posture. And let's just start by taking it back nice and smooth and hitting the ball solid into the center of the cup. I mean, from 1 foot, 2 foot. And I think, once you actually get them, knowing that and just getting them into a very consistent and confident success pattern, now we can start moving back 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet. But I think we have to take baby steps here. But these are baby steps of success that help create, bigger steps for, putting success as, time goes on. And I got to tell you, even, some of the very best players, they go, I'm just not making enough putts. I just had, some players the other day go, I'm just not making enough 10-footers. I'm going, have you been practicing the 10-footers? They go, no. And I go, okay, here's what we do. We go to 5 feet, then we actually go around the circle. Then you go to 6 feet, you go around the circle, you go 7 feet. But I want you to become very comfortable, in this whole process, is that every putt you're stepping into, you're stepping in, with the philosophy of this putt's going in the hole. But, when you start seeing it, going in the hole at 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet, 6 feet, 7 feet, what does that do? That gives you this memory of success, and you feel comfortable in that distance. So now when you're out on the golf course, and whether you're a new player or you've only played a couple of years or you're a veteran, is that when you get to that 6-foot putt, you're saying, this is comfortable for me. I've made a lot of these. I have prepped myself for this. And that's the whole point. That's why we practice so hard, so that when we get into the performance stage, we can handle that situation nicely. And we feel comfortable and we enjoy doing it. I mean, let's face it, guys. I said the reason why we have doubt and worry and mistrust is that we don't think we can handle it. And for me, I want every one of my players, to step into a putt and go, I've got this. I can handle this. Let's just stick to our process and roll it in the hole.
As the putting couch is brought to you by all of us involved with the SeeMore Putter Company, Doc, you talked about a friend of yours out in Montana who was regarded as the best putter in his area, and you said he's had a SeeMore in play for over 20 years. What was it about him and what he told you about SeeMore that you think is also transferable to that next time you get that clinic of new golfers together? I mean, here's somebody regarded by his peers as the best player, the best putter, and he believes in something like so many of our SeeMoreans do. What is it about, you're obviously very, very familiar with the product and you love to recommend it and use it in teaching and training your students. So tell us about that friend and that experience, and then how you could bring that forward if you're somebody listening to our podcast who may be an instructor or a parent or somebody that is just getting into the game. How can our unique technology help advance somebody in this putting game?
Well, when I was out in Montana, I met, this wonderful gentleman by the name of Tom Devlin, and he was regarded by, his club and all the people that have played with them as one of the consummate, instructors and putting gurus. And they said, this guy really walks the walk and talks the talk. And I didn't have a chance to play with him, but he was talking to me a little story, and I was kind of overhearing. And obviously he's become hopefully a new friend, but an acquaintance at the time. And he was talking about his relationship with George Archer, and how George Archer, was, the former Masters champion who, was very, very tall, who would get himself into a proper, what we call very square putting position. And I think that's really, why he has used this, SeeMore for years, because the SeeMore putter helps you just get into the proper fit, the proper posture. You know that you're aimed correctly every time, or that you have your putter set, to your intended line every time. And I think that's why, he probably is using it, because he has, sort of adopted some of the things that, who was at that time, back in the late 60s and early 70s, George Archer was regarded as one of the most pure putters of all time. I mean, there you had George Archer, and you had Dave Stockton, had several other people coming along the time. But I think, he was so influenced, by George Archer and his teachings, that's really what, helped him. But the other thing that, that Tom said in conversation at the table with a lot of great golfers, when I was there, was his idea of, I don't really clutter my mind with a lot of technique. I just know that the ball is going into the hole. I see it. I trust my instincts. I played for a long, long time. And he said, and what he really has, he has trust with this SeeMore putter that he's used for years. And that's the whole point. When you have this collective success experience with your putter, it then transforms itself from a putter into what we call a putting wand. It's like magic. And the magic is created by the trust that you have as a human being with this instrument that we call a SeeMore putter. So you can actually just take it back, and the putter, does the work, for you. So, but again, there is no substitute for success. And, with Tom, he was talking about keeping things simple, but it was all about, getting into the proper posture, and then just trusting, what your brain, your eyes, your visual system was giving you, and then just, reacting, to that, putting hole, and just rolling that little white pellet into the hole. And it was just that simple. And when you hear, great putters talk like that, you almost sit back and you kind of sit there and go, what is the one theme that always comes out of, having these conversations with great putters, wherever they're from? They have the process, they trust it, they believe in it, and they believe they're good putters. And they just say, I'm going to make this putt. I see it going into the hole. It's very childlike, and it's very simple. It's not complicated at all. It's not a lot of technique and a lot of number crunching. It's just something very simple, which, I marvel at, and I'm always trying to teach this childlike putting mentality.
It's funny because, you mentioned something there that does come up occasionally, and it's that, some golfers, when they first see SeeMore, they see that there's a little system. There's 2 white lines, there's a red dot, and they'll be like, I'm really going to try to be more of a feel player. I want to be more focused in not worrying about, the technicals and, the fundamentals. And they may pass on giving SeeMore a try. Whereas in reality, most of the great players, all the way to Zach Johnson and Payne Stewart and your friend Tom and everybody else, what they usually tell us is that it's actually because of this tiny technical story that puts you effortlessly into the right position, gives you the same sort of foundation that many of the tour players have, that they can then say, that's why I'm not going to worry about the technical part. I'm going to start worrying about my speeds and my lines and just playing the game athletically and through feel, because my putter at this point, I know I can rely on it and count on it. And so it's actually a little bit the opposite of what some people believe. And I think as we get the word out, that's one thing that we try to, and press upon people is that, hey, just a little bit of medicine up front, is going to go a long way towards actually making you the feel and the flow type of player that you want to be.
And really the SeeMorean philosophy is, we're going to eliminate one of the variables. Do I have my putter face aimed correctly? Is my putter set correctly? So when you eliminate those variables, your other performance sensory systems can be enhanced. So the visual system, the feel system, where the ball needs to roll, you don't have to worry whether you're set up to the ball. And so with the SeeMore, it takes care and eliminates a lot of those variables that a lot of people get conflicted by.
Doc, it's a lot of fun today, and we're going to have you on again real soon. We really enjoy having you on here. We know that you're You are counsel to many of the world's great players. You're developing many of the world's next generation of great players, and we appreciate that. We love having you on as a friend of SeeMore, and we look forward to doing this again very, very soon. And this is just a podcast. It's not video. I wish everybody could see how great you look today. And you look like the consummate professional. You've been listening to episode 46 of the Putting Couch.
Thanks, guys.
We appreciate you joining us. If you haven't subscribed to the show, make sure you do wherever you're listening. Be sure to leave a rating and review because that's how we get the Putting Couch podcast content in front of more people. Also, take a screenshot and share it on social media and tag us at SeeMore Putters or hashtag Team SeeMore.